We'll ask for a roll call, please.
Mrs. Reyes,
Here.
Mrs. Barnett, Mr. Ceniceros.
Here.
Mrs. Contreras, Mrs. Soshinek.
Here.
Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we'll ask you to silence your phones and also take a moment of silence, please. Thank you. We'll move on to board member statements. Does anyone have statements? Go ahead, Amy.
I just wanted to commend all of our staff who taught at our summer school program. Both my young children were so excited to attend, and it was really well run. It was well organized. The meeting before for parents was great. I can't say enough great things about it. Everything was just so well organized. Pickup, drop off was great. I had no problems with that. So good job, Country Place, and everyone, all the staff that worked towards that. I know that other administrators went and helped out there as well. And I want to commend our food services staff. Since summer school ended, my kids have begged for the breakfast and lunch, so I've been visiting to give them free breakfast and lunch because they love school milk. I don't know what's different from the milk I buy, but they love school milk. So thank you.
Thank you. Marcus?
Well, thank you. I first want to take a moment to acknowledge the opening of our 10th Academy, celebrating a milestone in the growth of our community. Our community is experiencing, and we welcome all the growth, and we will see what the foreseeable future brings us. Today's ribbon cutting just reminded me the power of public education. And I always like to say that the first line of a community's voice and power is their local school board and their local public school. Besides attending a national school board conference in New Orleans with school board partners, learning about the importance of having student leadership at the decision table, to learning about leading climate-ready schools, to learning comprehensive ways to address and retain not only teachers, but district leaders, school leaders, learning about how to keep district leaders and preparing a robust superintendent evaluation. I learned a lot, and I felt so recharged to be prepared to come back and continue the hard work for our students, community, and staff. I also want to wish all of our families and students and staff a happy new school year. I know our doors open up July 26th, and I want to thank all the families who choose their local public schools this year. That's all I have.
Thank you. And I just want to say thank you to everyone in the room who had, and I'm sure all of you played a part, no matter how big or how small, in helping with picking up the slack or whatever it meant in helping us get the Lincoln property up and running. That means sometimes people are gone and other people are picking up things, and we want to certainly recognize those people. Even though they may have to stay behind, they certainly pull the weight for others while they're doing things. So thank everyone. With that, Dr. Freeman, we're going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Buenas tardes a todos, everyone. Welcome, good evening. I want to start by introducing some new members of the district's leadership team. The board took action in June so they could start at the beginning of July, which really started with a holiday for most of us, and they weren't able to attend the June meeting, and that's Rob Manahan and David Suter. Robert Manahan is joining the school district as a principal of the Fine Arts Academy. Dr. Manahan graduated from Washington State University with his bachelor's in education, taught middle and elementary school for 10 years, went on to complete his master's degree in school administration and a doctorate in leadership and policy studies from the University of Washington. Over the past 20 years, he's served as a principal, executive director, and a superintendent in the state of Washington. He comes highly recommended by his colleagues and supervisors, and we feel fortunate to have him join the team and bring that level of experience to the Fine Arts Academy. if you would like him to come to the podium and say a couple words. I believe he's prepared. Otherwise, I can introduce the next person.
Nope, come on down.
It's tradition.
Always dangerous to applaud before someone speaks, but thank you very much.
I didn't. I went like this only a little. I'll give you a chance.
Thank you very much, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Freeman. I appreciate the opportunity to serve Littleton Elementary School District. You've seen my resume, but most importantly, I retired for a couple of years there and failed, and ran into Dr. Haid, who is very persuasive and has asked me to come back, and I'm really excited to be here. I appreciate the values of trust, respect, and communication or collaboration, and dedication and integrity. Those line up with my own values, so it was really comforting to come here and see that. Also the fact that when we talk about your tagline of leading learners, to me, that's really what we are. We are all learners, and the fact that that's the attitude and the values that you guys are adopting and embracing was also really encouraging for me to continue my advocacy for public education. I do want to thank Dr. Freeman, Dr. Haid, Ms. Vanderwater, Ms. Garrison for the work on the retreat we did the other day, because that really cemented that this isn't just a tagline or just a bunch of words in a value statement, but it is being lived daily by these individuals, my colleagues, and others that I've met that have been really supportive. So I am looking forward to serving this district, this community, our kids. I'm looking forward to advocating for public ed. That's why I chose to come back into the field. I wanted to continue to contribute. And I think this is a great place to be. And congratulations on the monumental achievement of opening up another school. That is no small thing, and I congratulate you on that work, and Dr. Freeman on your work in doing that as well. So thank you. I'll take any questions if you had any. If
No,
not,
we'll clap
I'll
now.
just-
Thank you very much. We appreciate it, and we look forward to working with you.
All right, Madam President. Also joining the district is Mr. David Suter, and he's joining as the Director of Operations. He owned and operated an independent transportation company in Pennsylvania for 25 years, where he provided transportation services to several school districts, and then relocated to Arizona, where he's worked at Phoenix Elementary School District, and for the past 7 years at Tolleson Elementary School District, where he served as the transportation supervisor and director of operations. He comes highly recommended from his colleagues and supervisors. He's here tonight. I think he's been prepared to make a comment, but since Rob already did, it's kind of mandatory to.
No, you have to come on.
Fair, yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Freeman, for that introduction. So good evening, Madam President, members of the governing board. And Dr. Freeman, it's definitely my pleasure to come on board here at the Littleton Elementary School District. And I'd like to thank each one of you for providing me this opportunity to be part of an amazing team. And I know the values, and I know it's your values as a district, as well as being a Kids of Hope district, which Tolleson L was as well. And I know the emphasis that we put on that and the importance of that, you know, every child can succeed without exception. So with that being said, I also am very excited moving forward with the district in the future growth. And we had an example of that at our lake for our ribbon cutting today, and I know there's a lot more growth for the district, and I'm just very proud that I'll be part of that. And I just again want to thank each and every one of you for the opportunity. Any questions?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Well, some of you may remember that last year we said it feels like we're starting over after the pandemic, but it seems like really last year it wasn't that simple. So we are going to continue to build on that foundation with continued improvement and trying to get things right more of the time by being better together. So Better Together is our theme for the 2023-24 school year, and we're borrowing it from the lyrics of one of Alex Boyer's songs, and he will be our keynote speaker at the kickoff right before school starts. As treasure hunters, the path to success can be continually reimagined for our students, for their families, and for ourselves. The phased opening of Lake and Prep Academy is emblematic of the new school year of managing all of the education and economic pressures on our public schools. Inflation's made everything more expensive for everyone. That includes building and operating a school. Our board's been forward-thinking in their planning for our learning community and saved millions of dollars for our taxpayers compared to waiting for state leaders. We just came back from the ribbon cutting, as has been mentioned, in the dedication ceremony. I'm proud and thankful to be able to offer yet another option for families in our community. Our families deserve real, robust learning options, and these are only possible because of the continued voter support by our operating and bond elections. The International Baccalaureate program that's being adopted at Lake and Prep aims to provide an education that enables students to make sense of complexities of the world, as well as equipping them with the skills and dispositions needed for taking responsible action for the future. It's especially ambitious considering some of the hostile environment around public schools and that we need to navigate these days. We're looking forward to seeing this curriculum in action and believe the phase opening of the new school will make its implementation even stronger as we go. We are, as mentioned, a district at hope, and we can't underestimate the tremendous power of hope in building futures. We're reminded at a recent conference, the absence of hope is what determines success more than risk or trauma. Resilience sits between risk and hope. And in moments of doubt, we remind ourselves that we believe in our students and that they are all capable of success without exception. At the same conference last month, we were introduced to one of our former students from the 80s. That was before Kids at Hope, but he had an extraordinarily hopeful message. Some of you may remember the name Jason Sheckerly. Does that sound familiar to anybody who's been here a long time? So he may be familiar because of all the media coverage around the former police officer, former Littleton and Underdown student, who was trapped in a burning patrol car in an accident in 2001. He was just 28 years old at the time. Today he's 50. He woke up to have his life completely changed. Yet despite the tragedy of his burned body and painful recovery, he had another child, raised his family with an amazingly dedicated wife. He reminded us of the power of the human spirit and that life is only 10% of what happens to you. Jason said, I believe there is a phoenix in all of us, and that we shouldn't let the pain of today blind us to the promise of tomorrow. This is also a strategy of hope. 7th grade students had the opportunity to tour ASU campus, and while they were there, they met some of the current undergraduate students and learned about what it means to be ready for life at a 4-year university. It was a wonderful day, and their reflections showed they got a lot out of the experience. Collier's Student Council attended the Arizona Association of Junior High Schools annual student convention just before the end of the last school year, and Collier and Quinton students who attended the state convention earned recognition, including Master Council for Collier. Our summer acceleration camp, as Ms. Sesnick mentioned, was a great success for our students, families, and staff. We had 41 kids in summer acceleration pre-K at the Littleton campus, and another 526 students at Country Place Leadership Academy in grades K-7. So those kids will be moving up to 1st through 8th grade. Although we had over 80 paraprofessionals who delivered 90-minute blocks of English language arts and math learning, the theme of Accelerate into Learning was incorporated into all areas of the program, including School Spirit Week. The highlight of Accelerated Learning Day was afternoon enrichment experiences. And teachers decided on what the students could enjoy and build on curriculum surrounding that topic. And some of the experiences explored included science labs, arts and crafts, sewing, circuit boards, engineering, coding, marble roller coasters, building glow-in-the-dark arcade games, sports, dance, drama, and no-bake cooking. and much more. The breakfast and lunch were served over the summer, and I think that's going on this week. This is maybe the last week for summer feeding, and those were served every day with an opportunity for students to gauge in recess and socialization while they were at the summer camp. The program ended with a trip to the Arizona Science Center, and overall the feedback from Littleton families on the summer program was very positive and appreciative, and we want to thank all of the people in Education Resources, the staff who planned the program, our teachers, and our transportation food service departments for their support. The summer meal program continues, and so we don't have the final numbers yet, but so far we've reported 8,324 breakfasts, 9,141 lunches, and that's from the end of May to the end of June. So we'll have a few more before we finalize that. We want to thank SFE for their continuous commitment to assisting the community meeting their nutritional needs, and the summer feeding for our community continues until the 14th, which I think is this Friday. Is that right? Thursday or Friday? And that's at Country Place, and it'll continue here at the Bistro until the 27th of July. Is that right? So into the start of the school year. We've planned a variety of professional development opportunities for staff to be ready for the new year. We started with a leadership retreat yesterday. We've shared the same leadership book and Littleton notebook with the governing board at the dais tonight. And so that's in your blue bag. Orientation for new staff members starts tomorrow. New administrator starts July 17th. Professional development activities for teachers start on Wednesday for people new to the district, and returning teachers and staff later at different dates depending on how long they've been with the district. We have a different program for different teachers depending on their years of service, and an excellent gathering for the entire staff to kick off the year with Alex Boyer on July 25th. School starts at 7:30 next year for Country Place Leadership Academy, Littleton STEM Academy, Lake and Prep Academy, and Trace Rios Service Academy. It starts at 8:25 for the Collier Business Academy, Fine Arts Academy, Estrella Vista STEM Academy, and Quinton STEM Academy. The first day of school is Wednesday, so it's an early release at 12:10 and at 1:05. Meet the Teacher Night is July 24th from 5 to 7 p.m. All digital information and registration is new this year, including teacher assignment lists, transportation, insurance, meals, and a half a dozen other attestations, as well as a way to upload important documents. The online school has their orientation on July 19th at 5 o'clock. This year, 10% of our teachers are coming from overseas, and we'll be adjusting to all of them while they're adjusting to all of us. Some of them will have their arrival delayed by all of the government red tape required to work in other countries, and that may impact the start of school in some cases. Depending on the approval of exchange visas, we'll need to make some adjustments for a few days, using some coaches and other staff to help cover those rooms for our new international teachers to get here this year. Teachers at Lake and Prep are coming from Spain, and I want to mention that our community is warmly invited again to the tours on July 18th. It'll be a unique opportunity to learn more about the building and the programs, as docents will be available to prove interpretation and information of the site. Tours start at 5 with the last tour ending just before 7, and of course refreshments will be available, but only for those who finish the tour.
Okay.
I'd like to remind everybody that our time to be better together begins on July 26th, the first day of school, and we'll be easing into the 23-24 school this year with early release. Transportation has worked hard on planning bus routes, but we need to encourage parents to talk to their students about bus stops and to start assuring little ones that school is a safe and wonderful place to be. We right now do not have the same number of families registered for buses as we had at the end of last year. So we'll have a big push on at Parent-Teacher Night because it's hard to schedule routes and stops without having those kids listed on the bus roster. So we look forward to seeing everybody then. In closing, I'd like to thank SRP and the City of Avondale for their continued support to get Lakin's construction completed on time, and that's all I have.
Thank you. Ms. Vandewater?
President Reyes, members of the governing board, Dr. Freeman, it is a great honor to present to you our program showcase for this evening, Littleton School District's District Art Show. During the 2019-20 school year, due to our dynamic distance learning model, we had to showcase our art show at 7 of our schools in a slideshow. And then in the 2020-2021 school year, again, we were not able to host the district art show due to COVID metrics, but we were so fortunate that this year, for the 2022-2023 school year, we were able to host our incredible district art show in person, a display of the artwork representing all of our schools at the Avondale Public Library. The student artwork was displayed for our staff and our community. They had an opportunity to view all of the talented work of our students. We had a team of Littleton staff members come together and visit each of the art pieces at the art show. And they selected a variety of art pieces to purchase. And we historically purchase those artworks and we hang them in the district office in the hallway for our guests and our visitors to see. We also had an opportunity to select artwork from each one of our schools to win a first place and a second place prize. On the screen, you can see we'd be remiss to not celebrate and recognize our art teachers. We maintain a strong arts program in our organization for all of our schools, kindergarten through 8th grade, and we are very proud of that. And we have incredible art teachers, as you can see their names represented here, who bring out the creativity in all of our students and allow them an opportunity to express themselves in a variety of ways. So we're proud of our art teachers and the work that they do with our students. The next series of slides, we don't have the actual artwork here, but we do have some excellent photos that our superintendent was able to provide to us. These are the pieces that we have purchased, and you will be able to have the pleasure of viewing them throughout the course of the years in our hallways. You can see the students' names, their grade level, and their school represented, as well as their art teacher. Aren't they beautiful? Variety of mixed media, oil pastels you can see, paints, acrylics, super vibrant. Students are learning elements and principles of design. These are some of the three-dimensional pieces that you can see. Aren't those fun? Gorgeous. Here, what you have represented are each one of the schools and the first and second place winner, the child's name, and their grade level. We will make sure, since our students are not here this evening, they know that they have won these great honors. We will make sure that we also provide a certificate to each one of the students and recognize them in that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any call to the public? No. So no call to the public. We'll move on to item 9. Is there anything from the consent agenda that the board wishes to have pulled? Hearing none, we will move to have a motion on item 9, the consent agenda.
I move that the governing board approve the items submitted for consent.
Thank
I
you.
second.
Thank you. I have a first and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion will pass. Thank you. Moving down to item 10. So let me get there. And it looks like we're going to turn it over to you, Mr. French. Are we going into? Okay. So no need to convene, so Mr. French, take it away.
Thank you, President Reyes, members of the governing board, Dr. Freeman, and Littleton community. This public hearing is being conducted for consideration of residents and taxpayers of the Littleton Elementary School District community to present the adopted expenditure budget for fiscal year 23-24 and the truth in taxation. In a regular meeting following the hearing, an agenda item will be introduced to adopt the truth and taxation levy and the expenditure budget. We're holding this public hearing in accordance with ARS 15905, which requires school districts to hold public hearings when adopting a budget and if a budget revision is required in December. Madam President, this is the same budget that the board saw in June, and I do not see any members of the public here, so I would be happy to go through the presentation with you or abridge any of the slides that you want to see, however you'd like me to proceed.
The board has seen the presentation. Is there desire to go back over the presentation?
I just had a couple of questions.
Okay, so there is a question, so if we bring up the slide presentation?
Sure. Jim, if we go to the next slide. This is the budget timeline. So this is the timeline that the district adheres to as far as budget adoptions, proposals, revisions, as well as when we do our annual financial report, which is all the expenditures for the fiscal year. If we take a look at the next slide, we were fortunate to have the legislature pass the budget bill prior to us having to propose and adopt these forms this year. So we did know that there was an increase of 2.92% in the base level, which was $139.44 per weighted ADM. They also allocated an additional $300 million in one-time funding. Transportation support level moved from $2.32 to $2.37, and we had an increase in our capital formula by 9.38%. This is how we basically calculate the general budget limit. We start with our base support level, add our transportation revenue control limit. We take a look at the M&O override for the coming year, any carry forward with that we had from the prior year. We did have an energy and water savings transfer. That was for a project, energy conservation project that we had done 4 or 5 years ago. We had additional Prop 123 money that goes into our budget, as well as the one-time state aid supplement, which gives us a general budget limit of $49,757,034. This is assessed value history. So you can see the assessed value all the way from 2014 all the way to current year. We've had some significant growth in assessed value, and that's mainly due to a lot of the vacant property becoming commercial and residential property, and adding to the value of the district. Again, tax rate history from 2015 down to 2024. You can see that that is steadily decreasing, which does have a correlation to the assessed value that we looked at the last slide. So the higher the assessed value, typically the lower that the tax rate's going to be in order for us to accrue all the funds for the district for the current year. Truth in taxation. This is for adjacent ways levy. Littleton has set a levy for adjacent ways of $550,000 for this fiscal year. A truth in taxation notice was provided in the newspaper for this meeting here. And it does require us to post a levy for an amount of a $100,000 home with the levy and without the levy. Without the levy, the rate would be 0, and with the levy on a $100,000 home, the rate would be $14.24. So at this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board has.
Questions? Yes, sir.
So as I've sat through and processed the entire budget process as a new board member, I just had a couple questions that I was able to come up with. And I know we talk about like district-wide budget, but I just wanted to know like how much of our budget goes individually to each of our campuses and is distributed each individual campus.
Thank you for the question, Member Censoneros. We have a formula that we actually do based on campus enrollment, and we give them both capital money and M&O money. That money is independent of salaries or benefits for any of the staff there. That's all in a district budget, but that's money for supplies, paper, field trips, any capital purchases that the district or that the school wants to make above and beyond what the district is providing them. So we do have a formula. I don't have that with me today, but I'd be happy to share it with you at a later time.
Oh yeah, please. And then I know we're going to run out of SR money next year, and I just was thinking of that. I know some districts have hired on some support staff with SR money, and I was just wondering if like there was a certain amount of staff that are we going to be losing any staff when SR money ends, or any major programs that we have that we're going to be losing with SR money?
Yeah, Member Cisneros, we did talk about this right when ESSER came out, and we didn't want to create any fiscal cliffs by getting a whole bunch of staff and then not being able to pay them going forward. So what we did was we looked at all the staffing that we could have, and we phased back that staffing and brought them back into M&O or whatever funds that they should be paid out of to ensure that we don't have a fiscal cliff when all the ESSER money runs out. We do have staff that are still currently being paid out of ESSER and will be paid for out of this fiscal year, but we do have a plan to bring them back into either M&O or another fund to keep them in order to keep them on at the district.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. Any more questions? No? All right, so we did not, there was no public available, so we do not need to convene into a session. So at this point, we're going to move to number 11 for the review and potential adoption of the expenditure budget.
So, Madam President, it's the same presentation. All we need at this point is for a motion from the board to adopt the budget for fiscal year 23-24.
I move that the governing board adopt the adjacent ways levy and expenditure budget for fiscal year 2023-2024 as presented, in the authorization of expenditures in the M&O section in excess of any subsection, provided that all expenditures do not exceed the total budget.
I second.
Thank you. I have a first and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion will pass. Thank you. We'll move to item 12, which is an action item as well.
Thank
Mr. French?
Thank you, Madam President. This evening, we are bringing before the board a revision to Exhibit JQEA for student fees. This is an item, Madam President, that last year we brought before the board and asked the board to waive any student fees according with the pandemic and inflationary costs. We were using ESSER funds to absorb the cost of athletic fees. We are considering that the fees be returned to offset some of those participation fees that we saw. Last fiscal year, we saw ESSER absorb about $30,000 in costs that would have normally been associated with a student performance or pay for performance fee structure. Prior to last year, you can see the fees currently were $25 per student per activity, $60 per student annual max, and $80 or $90 per family annual max. What we have done, Madam President, is we have aligned the proposed new fee structure with the Arizona Tax Credit Program, which means that families of single taxpayers are able to contribute up to $200, and this program would qualify for that, and it's a tax credit, so they get it back from the state of Arizona in their tax returns each fiscal year, essentially costing the families nothing when they participate in sporting activities through the district. So the new fee structure proposed would be $30 per student per activity, or $100 max for the annual each year, or $200 for the family. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board has.
Yes, Amy?
So I guess my question is, are our schools and our teachers, are they required to use this? I'm thinking of my daughter does dance at Fine Arts, and that's not considered an athletic. But I certainly would love to support dance more than $1. So can the teacher or the school decide that the athletic fee's higher?
So, Member Soshnick, we, through the Arizona Tax Credit Program, you have the ability to designate funds. So you can, through the tax credit program, a married filing jointly can do up to $400. A single taxpayer can do up to $200, and you can designate where those funds go. So, for example, with your daughter, if you want to designate them to go to the dance program, you can put that in the tax credit donation, and then that donation follows your request as to where that money goes.
And thank you for that. I guess my question more so was, could the school or the coach decide that maybe the athletic fee was, or the activity fee, because it's not an athletic fee, is $15?
Member Soshnick, they would have to be consistent with the board adopted exhibit here.
Okay, thank you.
So just to be, so we've canceled student fees for the last 2 school years?
Member Cisneros, we've canceled athletic fees for the last fiscal year.
Last fiscal
Prior to that, I don't believe, I think we suspended sports due to COVID.
Okay. And then this would be, so I'm understanding that if my mom puts me in sports and the money that she pays into it, she will be getting it back when she files taxes?
So Member Cisneros, this does qualify as an Arizona tax credit program. So we would be able to provide her the documentation that she would need in order to, when she files her taxes, claim this as a tax credit, and she would be getting a $1-for-$1 credit back from the state of Arizona.
Okay.
You have to complete the form, and then that goes with your taxes. If you don't
Okay.
complete the form, you don't get the credit.
Okay. And then you said last school year there was about $30,000 worth of student athletic fees that there was. Is that the, I think, I would have liked to see like an average trend. I know we're growing very fast, and then our enrollment declined during COVID. I would like to see like an average chart of like what's been the average trend. I also would like to see how much would it cost us as a district to cover student athletic fees annually. So I know that that's $30,000 for last school year. I think that, you know, I know some school districts are able to financially support that, to cancel it. I just think I'd like to see that because, and then another question was that how much debt is typically built up from parents who are unable to pay for that. And then I know in the policy also it mentions that principals are allowed to waive the fees if the student is financially unable to do it. How many, what's the average trend of a principal per student participating actually suspending that fee per campus? That's all I had for questions right now.
Madam President, we have waiver data from the year prior to the pandemic, but there's nothing recent because we waived the fees last year. So right now the data is 30,000, but we did have a site-by-site waiver information from pre-pandemic, which we could provide. Okay. Otherwise, you know, there isn't any.
So I just have a few questions myself. I totally understand how the Arizona tax credit works. What I'm not understanding is there will be community members that won't do that, right? They'll choose to give to the homeless or whatever. There's multiple things you can give to. So I'm concerned that, you know, we're kind of banking on people taking the Arizona tax credit and being able to apply it to activities, which you know, if you're an organization or a community, people lean on United Way or whatever it is they're leaning on. It sounds like you're very confident that this, or at least that's the way I perceive it, is that Arizona's taxpayers would give to this athletic program or the school. I'm not so sure I believe that. I don't know the data in the past. I know I have given some to some and some to somewhere else, depending on what your beliefs are or what you try to support. So mine's kind of back to the same question is, I would not want to rely on that and then have, you know, 100 students not be able to participate because there's no money. So I'm not sure I can understand the fees. I understand everything's raising, but I think in order to understand that relying on Arizona taxpayers, our community, without knowing what that would look like, what if that's only 5% of the population that's willing to give? Do you have an idea how many times when you look at them, how many times they give to schools?
Madam President, so there's two groups of people that we're talking about, and I think some members of the board may have commingled them into one. So, like I give, I'm single now, but I give $200 every year to tax credit to fine arts, and I don't have a kid who goes to school there.
Understand.
Right? And I think I also do the working poor or something like that because I can afford to.
Right.
That is benevolent giving, which I think is what you're talking about. What Mr. French is talking about is I'm a mom who wants to have my kids in sports. The max for my family is $200. The max for tax credit for me is $200. The most I would ever spend on sports in Littleton is $200, and I can take $200 a year as long as I have personal Arizona income tax liability. I can give it to the school and then cut my tax bill or get it back in April, depending on how you manage that. That's the group of families that are directly involved in sports.
How do you know that, though? I mean, I understand exactly what you're saying.
Right. If they paid the fee, they know how much they paid.
No, I know, but what?
It doesn't depend on the other people.
Yeah, no, I understand. I just don't know what percentage of our community would be able to understand it if we're sitting here watching it to say, okay, I get a tax credit. Does it make sense what we're asking?
Madam President, this, the current fee structure, the way it was prior, was the exact same structure.
Okay.
So they were getting tax credit letters from the district, and they were able to claim this. What we've done is we've taken a look at, the cost of officiating games and the cost of all these other things, and said that without, in the district's opinion, without affecting families, because they can give up to that $200 amount, changing that fee in order to help the district absorb some of the increased costs.
We certainly could track going forward some of the questions asked tonight. So going forward in fiscal 24, how many waivers, hardship waivers did principals feel like they needed to give? And we could track how many people who paid sports fees also put in for tax credit forms.
That's what I'm asking.
And collect the percent of that and bring that back to the board. But otherwise, I think the question is hypothetical. That we could generate that data over the course of the year for you.
Understand.
But I think it's speculative.
But
Madam
you
President?
just hit on what I was asking.
Yes.
Madam President, anytime that we get a sports fee from a family, we give them the tax credit
Right.
form.
No, I've
We
done it
don't
before.
know if they're going to use it or not.
Right. No, he actually just said exactly what I was trying to get to. I just wanted to know the percentage of people that give in relationship to that, in relationship to the dollars. But I understand if you can't get it because we don't have the data because of COVID and the fees being waived, then the question becomes, is the board comfortable enough to make a motion and accept the fees based on what we know as of today? So with that, I'll need someone to make the motion, and then we'll take a vote. Or is there more questions? Or do you want me to go first? Either way, I'm fine. So one of the thoughts and recommendations is to a phase-in, right? A phase-in of it. I will tell you, if I would not make the motion, I'm not comfortable enough. I don't understand it enough. But I would be more comfortable a phase-in and seeing by then we phase it in, try to cover some of that cost, right? Then we have the data to produce the data, and then we'll know if it's, somewhere. So could we phase in half? So instead of 30, could it be, well, it's only 25 to 30, 60 to 100 is a pretty big jump. And then 90 to 200 is a lot.
Madam President, we could keep the current structure, and we have one more year of ESSER that we could try to help offset some of those fees and get you the data, and then bring this back to you at a later date.
For me personally, we'll take a vote. That's a perfect solution because, I just want every student that can play athletics to play. but I understand we need to be fiscal responsible. Right now, we don't know, so should we take a motion first to see where people are on this particular item that's in the agenda, or can I just revise this?
Madam President, you or members of the board can make the motion as recommended or modify the motion.
They will modify.
So essentially, I think the numbers Mr. French gave you were 30 and 100 max, and 60 and 200 max. You just, if you want to do 50%, you do 15 and 50, and 30 and 100, and modify the motion as you make it, or say 50% of the fee and the max as presented.
Or we could make a motion to just use ESSER funds, right?
The administrative team would be using remaining fiscal 24 ESSER to offset the part that you phased. So if right now we spent 30,000, if you change that to 15 and 50, we would be spending 15,000 out of ESSER, but ESSER goes away after that.
Understand.
So, that means the ESSER wouldn't be available to do other things, but $15,000 is not going to dramatically impact other programs. I think the other thing that does is besides collecting data for the board, it prepares the community for ESSER running out and kind of sends a signal to people
There's a
that it's not going to be forever. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we will modify the motion. Yes?
Okay, yeah,
I'm going to modify the motion, and then if it's not, we'll deny that and someone else make another motion. So with it, we're moving, we're asking to move the governing board to approve a modification to use 50% of the ESSER funds for the athletic fees for fiscal year 23-24, with the understanding data will be brought back.
so I hear the motion. So instead of parent families having to pay $25, they're now going to be paying $15 per activity, since ESSER fund's going to cover 50% of the cost for the
They will-
motion that we're making.
Yes. 15.
Okay, so it'd be $15 instead
Yes,
of 25 this school year.
Yep,
Okay.
that is correct. That is what the motion is on the table.
Amy?
Are you asking for, I don't know what you're
I'm
asking for, Marcus?
just input.
Oh, input,
Yeah.
okay.
So the motion's been made, either we're going
Okay.
to approve or deny the motion, and the motion was made.
Second or it dies.
Exactly. So I have made the motion. Is there a second, or at this point, does the motion die and it brings it back at a different time?
I second the motion.
Okay, the motion I've made the motion. There's been a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none? Okay, wow, that motion passed.
Good compromise.
Yes, I think that was fair, and thank you for the suggestions. And, so at this point, Dr. Haight, it looks like it's turning over to you. Let's hope it's not as complicated.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. This is just information this evening. We will hear from the Director of State and Federal Programs and Assessment, Mr. Brian DeLessio, on the first piece of information that we've received from the state about our proficiency levels from last school year. He'll talk about a timeline. This is preliminary. We are still working through data and making corrections to data or appeals to the State Department. And so he will come forward and share his presentation with us.
Thank you.
Are we on? There we go. Thank you, Mr. Barrow. Well, good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Freeman. Thank you for allowing me a few minutes to just discuss our school calculations and how those are made up. So here we have some important timelines, and just kind of keep in mind as the process happens, just to ensure that our data is correct. There's a couple of static files that get released to districts where gives districts an opportunity to review the data, make sure it's correct, and so the state is using correct information in those calculations. As you can see there, the public release is scheduled no later than November 1st by statute. So I know last year it went right down, I think, to the last day, but I would expect it to come out much sooner this year. So there's basically 4 categories that schools can earn points in. They can earn 30 points in proficiency, 50 points for growth, 10 points for English language learners, and another 10 points in acceleration and readiness. And we'll kind of dive into each one of those on these next slides. So first we have proficiency, which is worth up to 30 points. The state weighs the proficiency depending on the level. So as you can see there, minimally proficient would earn 0 points, and they build up to highly proficient students would earn 1.3 points in that area. So what that looks like for the proficiency model is take those calculations of full academic year students. Those are students that were enrolled in the district within the first 10 days of school. Those are the students that are used in these calculations. If a student has left between that time and then came back, they are not used in that calculation according to FAE. There's also the stability model, which looks at how long a student has been at their current school. There's different weights if they've been there 1, 2, or 3 years. So students that have been at the same school for 3 or more years are weighted a little more than students that have only been there 1 or 2 years. Looking at those 2 models, the calculation takes the greater of the 2. So I expect we'll have some schools that have more points in the proficiency model, and we'll have others that score more in the stability model. Next, we have growth, which is actually 50% of the scoring, which is 50 points, or up to 50 points. Last year and this year, the model only used the growth percentile, student growth percentile, or the SGP. Next year, or for this current school year, the letter grades that come out next year will also include the student growth target. And so we'll kind of explain those on the next slide. Thank you, Mr. Barrow. And so for this year, we're just looking at SGP, which schools can earn up to 50 points. That describes the actual growth students make from the prior year to the current year. Starting, well, this school year, so letter grades for next year will include the SGT, which is the expected growth. The reason why it was left out the last couple of years is because the state needs a minimum of 3 years to collect that data so they can project the estimated growth for each student. So the letter grades that will come out hopefully soon will just be calculated for the student growth percentile, but it will be worth 50 points beginning this current year. We'll see a split of 25 and 25 points possible. Next, we have our English language learners. This category is worth up to 10 points, and this one is split into 2 different categories. We have proficiency on AZELA, which is the reclassification test for our English language learners. And then we also have growth on AZELA, taking how students performed on the prior year and how they scored in the current year. So that's broken into 2 different categories, but schools can earn up to 10 points in that category. And last, we have acceleration and readiness. This one is also worth up to 10 points, but there are, I believe, 5 different categories within this. So schools could actually score much higher than 10, but it's capped at 10 points. So first one is 8th grade math. Schools can earn up to 5 points for increasing their highly proficient 8th grade math student scores and decreasing the minimally proficient 8th grade math scores. Next, we have grade 3 ELA, so decreasing the school's current year minimally proficient compared to the prior year, the minimally proficient percentage. We have 3 more categories within this. We have chronic absenteeism, so schools that decrease their current year chronic absenteeism rate from the prior year, they can earn up to 2 points for that. They calculate the chronic absenteeism as 18 absences or more for the school year. Can also earn an additional 2 points for inclusion of special education students, meaning that we are mainstreaming a minimum percentage of our special education students into our general education classrooms. And last, we have improved growth of subgroups. So I think there are 6 or 8 different subgroups that we look at, and then you can earn points for each one of those subgroups if they showed an increase in proficiency from the prior year. So I think all in all, they can earn up to, I think it's like 20 points total, but again, it's capped out at 10. Then we also have 2 opportunities for bonus points. We have special education enrollment. So schools with a percentage of statewide average of students enrolled in special education, and also the science proficiency. So schools that test 95% of their students in grades 5 and 8 and scored at or above the statewide average. So schools can earn up to an additional 5 bonus points. So based on the data that we've received so far, we expect, or our preliminary results show that we have 44% of our tested grade levels showed an increase in proficiency from the previous year in both ELA and math. We have or expect over 70% of our schools to receive full points for acceleration and readiness. We had a minimum of 98% of our students tested in all brick and mortar schools, which was outstanding, I believe. The expectation or the minimum is 95% set by the state, so we're very proud of that. And then from the data that we've seen, we believe we've met or exceeded the other Tolleson Union High School feeder districts in looking at their preliminary results. So I hope I didn't go too quickly on that. It's a lot of information, but is there any questions or comments?
Go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation. It's amazing. So for met or exceed other Tolleson feeder schools, would you happen to have the data or the percentage that we were better at than our neighboring school districts?
Member Cisneros, sorry. That data, I'm not sure if we can, maybe I'll have Dr. Haid answer that one for me.
It's all the data we have is provisional. It's not released, so it's a little bit of a discussion between test coordinators as to how they're doing, but we will have that for you once it is released.
Okay, perfect. That's all I have.
Thank you, Dr. Freeman.
I just have one question on the 44% of tested grade levels. So if 98% of students tested, 44% of tested grade levels, I mean, that is 44% doesn't sound, I mean, it's good, but okay. Help me understand the variable. Do you understand what I'm asking?
As far as the percent
Yeah.
of grade levels that
Yeah.
showed growth from the previous year, yeah, I mean, we would definitely love to see that number much higher.
It seems like it went down, but it's been a while, so I've aged, but that looks like it's decreased, not increased. Yeah, I know it's lower than usual, I'm trying to be kind. I don't remember what it was, so when you come back, could you bring me, or the board, what it was historical? Because that, to me, sticks straight up, and like, that's interesting. So I need, do you understand? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we
Thanks.
can definitely,
Okay,
Madam
thank
President,
you.
get that for you.
Appreciate it, thanks.
No problem.
And then, when bring back that data, could we see, like, obviously the average percent of what school is doing, but could we also have a plan on what our budget is actively doing, the funds that are going to that school to help with that? And then could we also get the demographics of the staff that is there, the administrators and the students, to provisionally see which demographics are scoring better? I know we're 78% Latino. I just would like to see that data, if it's brought back to us at a
I
later
think you'd
time.
have to look at transitional students too,
Yeah.
right? I mean, transit students moving in, moving out, rotating districts, especially if it's school of choice. So whatever you could bring would be welcome.
Okay, Madam President, Member Cisneros, yes, we can definitely work on that data and compile that and have that for you at a later date.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you.
President Reyes and members of the board, this is just an introductory piece of several additional pieces that will be coming forward on school letter grades and proficiencies, leading all the way up to the monitoring report and historical data. So I know we've gotten out of whack a little bit over the years with the changes, so we will be having that for you.
Thank you for your presentation. Dr. Haight, are you still presenting?
Madam President, I believe I am. Thank you. We are moving on to item 14. This is the first reading of policy and review of regulations and exhibits for instructional programs and students. Our first three policies, policy IGA, curriculum development, policy IGD, curriculum adoption, and policy IJJ, textbook supplementary material selection and adoption, all have the same change, which is the School Boards Association made a recommendation that they insert the language about the adoptions following open meeting laws. This is not a new change in the law. It's just a change and a clarification in how ASBA has presented the policy. And we did discuss this with our attorney for the history of this, and this is just to tighten up the language on these three policies. If there's any discussion on this, I'm glad to entertain any questions that you have, but the changes are all the same for those three.
A, B, and C.
Yes.
A, B, and C, yes.
Sounds like there's no question, so we'll move to D.
Thank you, Madam President. The first reading of policy JLCD is medicines. There's a regulation and an exhibit associated with this. Annually, this policy comes before the board for change, as there are recommendations from health agencies and additions to state statute that require different needs for students medically. The change mostly discusses the change that we will follow for students with seizures, as the state legislature worked with the Epilepsy Foundation to incorporate this into policies. So the specifics in here follow the same between the policy, the regulation, and then the exhibit has been changed as parents are asked to fill out this piece of information for our health office staff. If there are any questions, there's not a lot of change from last year. It appears that way from the policy, but mostly due to the Narcan training, which we've discussed in the past. They cleaned up the language about that in this policy, and then also the seizure procedure.
Just one quick clarity on the epinephrine. Do you have a list who the two school personnel are at each school site that goes to training?
We do. At
Okay.
this point in time, Madam President, we have not put epinephrine. It's an option for the
Stocked.
district. So in the policy, it says it's our option, and we have not stocked it. We have stocked Narcan at this.
You have stocked it?
Yes,
Okay, but not
And-
epinephrine?
correct.
Okay, and there's a reason, the reason is what?
Initially, it was cost prohibitive. There was a whole piece, and then it was expiring before we were using it. And so
Gotcha.
we
Very expensive item.
we would stock it if we anticipated a need with a student.
I've not seen that.
right.
Okay, thank you. That's all I
Absolutely.
know.
We told the legislature if they paid for it,
Yeah, it's expensive.
and then we could throw it away on their expense.
Yes, Amy?
Students who have an allergy that could require epinephrine, they can carry their own EpiPen though, right?
There is a procedure for that in the policy. There's parental permission and different things like that. It's specifically outlined, and we have done that in the past. There's not a significant change from that.
Thank you.
Did you have a question, Marcus?
Yeah, just a comment. Well, thank you. I guess I'm just a little like bombarded with all the policies. I know we have like ASBA, like we can access policies ASBA, but I think like all these policies that are brought to us, I think I just like a comment is like I would just like to like have a binder of like policies that the district that the board has passed that we're not required to pass prior state law, and then just kind of see like which policies are state law that we're required to pass, and then which policies have been that the board has come up with, the districts come up with to pass. Because I just sometimes I try to study the policy we currently have, but it's very confusing. So just on a separate like request.
So when you go into the policy bridge and go down through the districts and find Littleton, when you access those policies, you're going to see on the top of some of them, I don't know if there's one of the examples here, if we scroll all the way to the top, it has a C, which means that's been copyrighted and essentially unaltered school board proposed policy. If we do an alteration to their recommendation, they take the C off. You're going to find probably a large amount of school board copyright policy, but when you get to regulations and exhibits, there's more differentiation between districts. And for instance, if our fee is 30 and somebody else's fee is 20 and somebody else's fee is 40, those are going to all be different. And that's the way you can tell if it's a state association proposed policy or board modified policy.
Okay, moving on, Dr. Hay.
Madam President, that was all.
Oh, so that was D1 and 2 that you covered.
Yes.
Okay, so at this time, I will call for a motion for adjournment.
I move that we adjourn at 7:10.
Thank
I
you.
second.
Thank you. Any opposed? No. All right, we are now adjourned at 7:10. Thank you.